Unit 4, Day 2, we're going to do some more solving quadratics. Now we're going to do it by graphing. So we're going to look at how we can graph to do it. So first off, my learning target, I can solve a quadratic equation by graphing. So just remember, recall here that when the value, when we say value, we mean y or f of x, whichever one those are. So when y or f of x of any function is 0, so when the actual value is 0, we call that and there's three names for it. We can call it the 0 because the value is 0, that makes sense. We can also call that a root, and we also call that the x-intercept. So there's like three ways to name the same thing. On this graph, remember this is the y-axis, y is 0 right here. So these have, maybe this is like 1, so 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. So this would be when y is 1, would be when x is here. When y is 2, x is there. But right here, y is 0 because it's on the x-axis. So right there is a 0, a root, or an x-intercept. And right there would be a 0, a root, or a y-intercept. Or I'm sorry, an x-intercept. So any name. So 0, root, or x-intercept. So now below, let's do this. I'm going to graph it. I'm going to look for where does it cross the x-axis, and where it crosses the x-axis, that is the root, the 0. You can call it a solution too. That's actually a fourth name I think I left off here. So a solution is another name for it. So if I was going to solve by graphing, first off, this guy, let's do this. I want x squared. So I want it to be a positive x squared. So I'm going to bring that to the right side. So when I bring the x squared to the right side, it'd be x squared. I'm going to leave the negative 2x on the right side, and then I'll bring the 8 over as a minus 8. So say that equals 0. So now I could do some graphing. So negative b, I'm going to try to find the vertex. I'm going to graph it the way we learned how to graph it last unit. So negative b, that'd be a positive 2, because the opposite of negative 2 would be a positive 2. So negative b over 2 times a, which would be 1. So at x equals 1, there is an axis of symmetry. And then when I plug 1 in, I'm going to plug 1 in up here. So y equals, let's see, 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 8. So that would be a 1 minus 2 minus 8. So I got 1, basically minus 10, so that'd be negative 9. So way down here, so 6, 7, 8, 9, somewhere down in here, get on the graph here, is my vertex. Now I'm looking for, though, where does it cross the x-axis? So I'm going to work my way out from the vertex. So now I know what the value is when I plug in 1. I'll try 0 next. Let's plug in 0, because this would be my y-intercept. That's kind of an easy one. If I plug in 0 here and 0 here, it's just negative 8. So somewhere in here, and if I reflect that over, now I know what it would equal. So if I plugged in 2, so f of 0 is negative 8, f of 2 is also going to be negative 8 because it mirrors itself over. How about, let's keep working our way here. I could keep going in the negative direction. I'm going to go in the positive direction. I'm going to plug in 3. So f of 3 would be 3 squared minus 2 times 3 minus 8, so 9 minus 6 minus 8, that's 9 minus 14, so that'd be negative 5. So 3, negative 5. And the good news is I can mirror that over. So that'd be, if I plugged in negative 1, I would also get negative 5. Now I'm going to plug in 4. So 4 squared minus 2 times 4 minus 8. So it'd be 16 minus 8 minus 8. And that looks like that's a 0. So that'd be right here at 0. So 3 units to the right, go 3 units to the left, and there's another one. So if I graph this guy, it's going to look something like this. And I just found my answer when it says solve this equals 0. When does this equal 0? At 4. So when x equals 4 and at negative 2. And you can always check this by plugging it in. If you plugged in 4 here and 4 there, they would equal each other. If I plugged in negative 2 and negative 2, those two sides of the equation would also equal each other. The problem with this took a little while. right? This took a lot longer than I wanted it to take. Man, I don't want you to spend this much time, solving these guys. And sometimes, hopefully not too often, we won't do it to you, but sometimes these numbers aren't whole numbers, and that would be very difficult to find by hand. So what we're going to do here says this would be much faster on the calculator. Okay, and on this one, we're going to be doing a couple of steps here. So you need your graphing calculator. You have to have a TI-84 or TI-83 or 84. And it says the first step is to press Y equals. Okay, I'm sorry for my dining room light is right above us, so you can see it there in the reflection. If I move it over so a little, yeah, it's not going to help. But anyway, so just try to ignore that. Look at my screen, not the reflection. But on this guy here, and notice I did type it in differently into the equation. I have negative x squared plus 2x plus 8, and all I did with that was I brought this to this side when I graphed it. But I thought it'd be easier when I did it by hand to have a positive x squared. But if I brought that 2x over, it'd be a negative x squared plus 2x plus 8. Either way, you get the same answer for x's. So, and that's why it's going the other way now. Instead of being this way, now it's a negative x that's going down, but it's going to have the exact same, it's going to have the exact same x-intercept. So maybe that threw you off a little bit. Maybe you didn't notice, and I could have not said anything, you wouldn't have seen it. So, but so here's probably your original screen. If I turn it on and push the y equals, and in the first spot, type in your equation. So negative, let's see if I can, so negative, and then use this for x, negative x squared plus 2x plus 8. And then step 2 says to graph it. So what you want to do, you want to push the graph button, graph. This screen does not look like this screen. That'll happen sometimes to you, okay? What happened was, right now, this screen is negative 10, positive 10, negative 10, positive 10. So it's basically, a 20 by 20 screen, but from negative 10 to positive 10 in both directions. This screen is like, here's the x-axis going way up. If you want to get back to that standard window, which looks like this, push zoom, and you went number 6. Zoom standard, Z standard, okay? So zoom standard, there's my window, here comes the graph. Tip it this way a little bit so that reflection's gone. Now, step 3 says press, so here it says press second, that's the second button, and you'll see an arrow show up here, or it might say second on an order calculator. Then table setup, which is this right here. See, it says table setup right above window, so press that button. And what it's saying, it's going to make you a table. So like we say make a t-table, this one's going to make a t-table for you, and it's going to be fast. Table start says where do you want it to start? Well, maybe we'll just make it 0. And then this delta table means how do you want the table to change? So like, do you want x's go up by 1s? Yeah, we do. So we'll leave that as 1. Now, if you want them to go up by halves, you might put 0.5 in there. And we can mess around with that on another problem. Leave these two alone. Leave these as auto. Don't mess with those. So once you have that 0 and 1, go over here, press second. So second, whoops, I don't want to change that. Second, and then table. So second, and then see it says table above there. And then look for 0 in the y column. So what it did was, is when I plug in 0 for x, I get 8. When I plug in 1 for x, I get 9, and so on. Start scanning until you see a 0. There I see a 0. So x would equal 4. And we kind of know that. We had it up here. We had x equals 4. Now, I would need to scroll back because I go this direction and I just keep getting a bunch of negatives. And it's getting more and more negative. So it's not in that direction. I want to know going this way now. So 0, it's positive. Oh, see how it went from positive, bigger, bigger. Now it's going down, down, smaller, positive. Eventually, it gets to 0. There's the other one, negative 2. So when the value is y, x is negative. I'm sorry, when the value is 0, when y is 0, the x is negative 2. And then same thing for positive 4. when the value is 0, x was 4. So -2 and 4 are the two places where it gives you a 0. Okay. So now let's flip this over. Flip this guy over. And really, there's not a lot to write here. We're just kind of following the steps of what it says. Okay. So now, what are the solutions to this quadratic? Well, first off, before I put it in the calculator, you got to have everything on one side. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, change this. This would be 5x squared. When I bring that 2x over, I would add 2 x's. So this would be plus 2x. And then I would subtract 2 over. So this would be a 32x. And then this would be 14 minus 2. So that'd be 12. Okay, so that equals 0. What I'm going to do is I'm going to graph this. So let's graph this guy. So when you make the table, notice that 0 is at -6. So let's go. I got to put this in. I haven't done this yet. So let's go back here. Put this equation in. I just wrote up here. So 5x squared plus 32x plus 12. I'm going to go second table setup. And now it's -2. That just happened to be, that's the last one I left it on. You can change it to 0 if you want. You can leave it alone. Now I'll go second table. And what does it say? It says, notice that there's a 0 at -6. Perfect. So there's one of my answers. Okay, so -6. But where else? Okay, so look at how these numbers are behaving. So it goes from 0 to negative, bigger negative, bigger negative, smaller negative, positive at 12. What happened there? In order to get from a negative to a positive, somewhere between -1 and 0, it had to cross the x-axis. Okay, so somewhere in between there. So what I'm going to do now is, I can't see it because these are too far apart. The x's are too far apart. So it says here, it says change the delta table. The triangle means delta. It's just a word for change. So go to second table setup, change that to 0.5. I'm sorry, 0.1. So now instead of going up by 1, it's going to go up by 1/10. So table, and let's see here, what did we say? Let me pause a second. Let me go back and look what two numbers do we think it was between. So we thought it was between -1 and 0. So somewhere between -1 and 0, there's another one. So I'm going to go change this to 0.1, make another table. So somewhere between -1 and 0. In fact, I'm going to go to table setup. I'm going to change this to -1. I'm going to make that a -1 and my delta table 0.1. That way I fast forward. So here's -1. Now at -0.9, see how it's getting smaller, negative, smaller, negative, smaller, negative. And right there, I found it. It's a 0. So one of my solutions was at -6. The other solution here is at 0.4. There's my two answers. Now that took a little bit of time, right? That wasn't very much fun to have to guess. And what if it was even between one of those? What if it went from negative to positive but never hit 0 in the y column? That means it was hidden even further in. And I'd have to do even smaller changes. But the cool thing here is, can the calculator find the zeros even faster? And the awesome thing is, yes, it can. Okay, so it can do it for us. So we're going to graph this guy. So I've already got the equation in there. The y equals is already in there. So I'm just going to hit graph. And there I got this picture, and I want to see what are those two numbers right there. Okay, so the way to do this, press second and then calc. So second, and then see how calc is right here. So calc, choose the second one, 0, because we're looking for zeros. Okay, hit enter. And notice it asks a question here. Oops, get down here in step 3. It says left bound. What it's asking for, it's going to ask for a left bound and a right bound. So I want to be a little bit to the left for the left bound and a little bit to the right with the right bound of where the 0 is. So like, for example, you see my cursor moving here. It's going to come back around. Eventually it's going to come back around. There it is. So I can't get right on the 0, and that's okay. Since this goes from positive to negative, on the left side, I'm positive. On the right side of the 0, I'm negative. So I need a left bound. I'm going to tell the calculator, look anywhere between this, I hit enter, and then the right bound, I'll say, I can even go a little bit further and say here. So see how small that gap is? The calculator is going to look between that very small gap for a sign change. When did it go from positive to negative? And then it asks you, what's a guess? The guess is get as close as you can. Okay, this is about as close as I can get to it. So I'm going to hit enter a third time, and there it tells me -6 is one of my zeros. Okay, so that's kind of, I did all the steps here. I'm actually on step 6. So if you need to go through that again, read these instructions, do it again. And I'm going to try the other one now. So let's find the other one. So let's say I want to find this 0. So I'm going to second calc. I got to do the whole process all over again. Go to 0. Now for a left bound here, I'm going to come over. You actually type numbers in too. I know that -1 is to the left of it, so I could just type in -1 and hit enter. That's a kind of a faster way. When it says right bound, you could scroll to the right, or I know 0 is to the right of it. I could just type in 0 and hit enter. So I'm telling the calculator, check between -1 and 0. Somewhere in there is a 0. It says, can you give it a guess? Well, this is the closest I can get. Hit enter a third time. It tells me that y equals 0 and x is -0.4. So there's my other solution. Okay, so try that out a few times. You know, when you get to your homework, try it out. And we don't mind. I don't expect you to do it this way, this first way. I also don't expect you to do it this way, the table. If you understand that, then you can kind of understand what the calculator is doing. The calculator is quickly searching for that sign change that we just did. We did it in our heads here. We said, when did it go from negative to positive, or positive to negative? In fact, when it was a 0, we looked for it. The calculator is doing that, but it can go way faster than us. So we're going to let it do the work for us. So you can always do it the third way we showed you.